Habitat fragmentation is a major cause of both the decline in biodiversity and in the population of animal and plant species right across the globe. Megalomorphae, or primitive spider, is one group of animals facing such threats. Southeast Queensland is a region rich in primitive spider diversity, but now that diversity is under threat from habitat fragmentation. Habitat fragmentation is a secondary effect of habitat destruction, whereby the elimination of individuals or even entire species due to a destroyed natural habitat results in the remaining populations becoming isolated, as the links between patches of the habitat are removed. This can cause severe problems for individual species as well as for the ecosystem in which they belong. You certainly don't have to look hard to see the devastating effects habitat fragmentation is having on primitive spiders' natural habitats, particularly when looking at major cities and urban areas which are ever expanding.
Most of these areas have been so heavily disturbed that the spiders really most of them haven't survived particularly well. So that the degree of fragmentation of spiders in the Greater Brisbane area is very high, and there are no longer any real corridors for these things to rejoin.
Southeast Queensland is currently home to 2.8 million people and is expected to grow by almost another 2 million in the next 25 years. Furthermore, the Department of Infrastructure and Planning predicts that 754,000 new dwellings will have to be built, as well as additional infrastructure and services such as roads, parks and shopping centres.
They're often found in really clumped localities, so there's a lot of them found within one area. Just the chance of preserving the clumps of spiders in the process of fragmentation, just due to randomness, the random placing of these fragmentation, you're not going to preserve often a lot of where these spiders are. So you're going to end up with a lot of these fragments just not containing the spiders in the first place. And then due to the fact that they can't disperse easily, it means it's really hard for them to colonise these new areas.
So how exactly does this affect the primitive spider?
Just fragmentation in itself, the dispersal between a lot of the patches can be really difficult for a lot of species, and so I think that it really affects things like colonisation into new areas, or if you get local extinctions in some of these small patches, it's really hard for species to re-establish themselves in those areas.
Primitive spiders are also affected by disturbance to their resources. For example, primitive spiders require a humid environment in order to breathe. This is provided by the enclosed tunnels. So as urbanisation spreads, tree cover is reduced, which exposes the soil to more sunlight and heat, causing the soil to lose moisture. So what constitutes as a fragmented habitat? Firstly, we'll look at the spider's natural habitat. A great example of this is Lamington National Park. Lamington is a World Heritage location lying on the Lamington Plateau, 120 kilometres south from Brisbane City. It is the core of the central eastern rainforest and is rich in biodiversity. This is the subtropical rainforest of Binnaburra. Here, primitive spider diversity and abundance is excellent, and they are predominant as ground predators. Finding these spiders is in no way difficult. The edges of the bushwalking paths are lined with their tunnels. In contrast with this, spiders in fragmented parts of the Brisbane region, such as Ashgrove Park, Mount Cootha and the Kedron Brook area, can be very difficult to find.
In general, the thing that's happened with urbanisation is that trapdoor spiders have had contracted distribution. I don't think there's any case where they've actually expanded their distribution as a result of that. They might change it locally a bit, but in general what's happened is that the species has really dropped very, very hard. I mean, there should be probably in the order of about 8 species of trapdoor in the Greater Brisbane area, including the funnel web. And we're probably down to about 3 at the best of times. Sometimes we're even down to 1 and none. So the rate of change is the big thing. The faster the rate, the faster the change, the more dramatic the effect, and the harder the spiders can adapt to it.
This decrease in biodiversity and abundance clearly illustrates the negative effect urbanisation has on the primitive spiders. So, from this, it is evident that fragmentation of habitat due to ongoing human interference can greatly affect the biodiversity and overall population of primitive spiders.